I wonder if the larger goal is becoming who God intended for us to be, and technology's in the way.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, there's different renditions of this phrase, quote, "I'm not raising my kids like that," right? This is something that's really kind of popped up and I would say plagued the internet lately. These comments usually come from sometimes yet to be parents or young people who criticize the parenting decisions of their parents or their grandparents. As Gen Z becomes parents, they're planning on really de-introducing then things that many people from the millennial or Gen X parents have kind of led with. One of the biggest things that many are kind of saying that they're doing away with is this idea of the iPad kid. So in a 2015 study that was published by the American Academy of Pediatrics, researchers recruited 350 children aged 6 months to 4 years, and they looked at just how much exposure they had to mobile devices. Around 97% of the sample used technology like smartphones or tablets, with most of them using them before they turned 1 year old. The extent to which children were using them was really the largest concern from many that found this study. According to the study, roughly 75% of children had their own devices by the age of 4. Some researchers have even begun wondering if children might risk having an addiction to screens because of what they're noticing in dopamine levels that are hitting kids and what kids do when they don't have that dopamine hit. The conversations on parenting actually have gone now beyond criticizing older generations, though, as Gen Z is now slowly shifting away from technology in general, this technology that they were actually introduced when they were growing up. A 2023 study by a digital marketing site called Squarespace surveyed 4,000 people and found that more than 70% of Gen Z wanted to disconnect from their phones. In 2023, the dumb phone movement, as it's been called, people that don't use smartphones but go back to flip phones or phones that don't have any apps, there was a rise that was inspired by Gen Z and increased sales of flip phones as the generation has tried to lessen screen times and revert to earlier days of connectivity, one that was actually without social media. The less smartphones are part of a larger digital detoxing movement that's coming out in Gen Z. Dr. Kathy, my kids actually do have what I would call dumb phones. They're very limited phones. And the modern world's really making it harder for them. And that's because most things in their life, including schools, sporting events, team communications in those sporting events, even youth group interaction, a lot of it's done through social media apps. What do parents need to know about teen engagement and communication and the like, and how it guides and impacts identity and purpose and meaning, especially as they make friends, knowing that many of them are kind of being guided to make friends and be a part of these communities that we want them to be a part of through their devices?
This is a really challenging issue, and I'm so glad we're bringing it up because I don't envy parents, really including you and your wife, who are dealing with this very thing. I actually think dumb phones are smartphones, So we're talking about phones that maybe don't have internet, they don't have social media, they don't have the app store, so you can't add apps. I have told many youth pastors, and I just wrote in another book by someone else, a chapter where I talk about that youth pastors, as an example, should not require that their youth are on Instagram in order to have communication happen. You can do a text thread, and there's other ways to do it because I don't believe that the pastor should require something that a parent has not wanting their kids to have, because parents ought to be the primary leaders of their children's lives. And so I would like for the parent to be empowered to maybe go and say, this isn't working for me. And if you have children who don't have phones or children who have the dumb phones, if you will, then you do have to be available to them. And you do have to be willing to have your number shared with the coach or the piano teacher or the pastor. And then you have to be alert to go to your son and say, hey, here's the message from your pastor.
Yeah, I love that, Dr. Kathy. I think that those are all really helpful ideas. One of the things that we've actually started finding ourselves using is something that was developed by our friend Chris Casper over at Techless Wireless. It's a phone that actually kind of looks like a smartphone, but it operates like a dumb phone, right? It does tech. It does texting and calling. You can check your calendar. You can take notes on it. There's even some that are coming out, in a couple months that do hot spotting. So you can, kind of have a tablet or have a computer or things like that you might need an app for. But for the most part, you're kind of appless in your phone. So you're not sitting there scrolling and kind of doing all of that. And I think that's really been beneficial for us because we know that screens are really bad for us. This is something that has really come out, a lot and kind of in full force in the last probably 5 years. We know that social media companies don't really care about what's best for us. And actually they really care more that we're connected and kind of need their device or their app. So they make it really hard for us to leave and kind of play with different, addiction tendencies to keep us there. What would you say to parents and those that are working with kids, knowing that we're likely struggling kind of ourselves as adults to model this for our kids? Because a lot of these devices and things of that nature that we've kind of just naturally found some, whether it's enjoyment or connectivity with, we're kind of, connected to it too. How do we model that well for our kids?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And could I go back to the Techless phone? Because I want people to go to techless.com and check it out. What I love is it's called a Wise phone. I think that's so brilliant. It's not a smartphone. It's smarter than that. We are a Wise phone. And I love that it does look like and feel like the very popular iPhone, if you will. So I want people to check that out because it introduces kids to connection and all of that. So I hope people will check it out. We do need to realize, Wayne, that they're watching us. And we can put our phones down. In this article, you mentioned that we're wondering if kids are addicted to screens. Absolutely. There are psychiatric hospitals in the world now. I think the first one was in England for tech-addicted preteens and teens. And I know of many men and women who could check themselves in. And it's, gaming, it's pornography, it's social media scrolling, it's what's newest on the Pinterest board. It's who am I following? What are they doing? I can't afford to be left out. All those kinds of things. So let's admit in front of our kids that this isn't going well for our family. We parent you. We want to be connected. And let's make a decision as a family to fast on Wednesdays and Sundays. To my church, our pastor just challenged us to cut our leisure screen use in half. He stood up in front of everyone and he looked out at the kids and he said, I know that a lot of you are on devices for education. He looked out at the adults. How many of you use devices for work? And we all raised our hands. And so I'm not asking you to quit your job or put your promotion at risk. I'm asking you to play a board game and go for a walk and go to the zoo and cut your leisure time in half. And I think, wouldn't kids be more likely to do it if they saw mom and dad sacrificing too?
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I think that's really helpful. And I think taking those steps can be dynamic for a family. What would you say to a parent who wants to now kind of engage this conversation with a kid? Kind of paint the picture for me on how to start that conversation. What fundamental truths do I need to highlight? And then kind of set down as my kids are sitting down with me to start this conversation. Where do I really want this conversation to go? Is the point to get my kids to really put tech down? Or is there a larger goal that maybe I should have in mind and kind of use technology as an example of that? What are your thoughts there?
Wow. I wonder if the larger goal is becoming who God intended for us to be and technology's in the way. We're not reading as much, we're not playing as much, we're not exercising as much, we're not risking as much. So we're not becoming who we could be, and we're allowing tech to bore us and cause us to, again, not take risks, et cetera. So I think maybe that's the conversation. And again, I think it starts with not presenting this idea that you're bad because you're on your screen so much. You say that and they're going to throw right back in your face, you're on your screen too. And legitimately so, although I hope they would say it with respect. So I would love to say that the family sets a goal because we love and we care. And I think the mom says, I miss you. You're not helping with dinner anymore because you're paying attention to so many of your friends and I miss you. Maybe that's part of the conversation.
As Dr. Kathy was talking, it reminded me of a passage that comes out of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 14. Here for the third time, I am ready to come to you, and I will not be a burden, for I seek not what is yours, but you. For children are not obligated to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. I will most gladly spend and be spent for your souls. If I love you more, am I to be loved less? These words from Paul are really unique. It's kind of at the end of 2 Corinthians. It's a time when Paul's kind of recounting how many times he's visited the church in Corinth. And in that time, he also kind of highlights this reality that he is really setting, in many ways, kind of a standard, not necessarily for others to follow, but kind of for himself, that he is spending himself in this moment, giving up different things to focus on the people in the church. And I think that testament, that testimony that we see here in 1st and 2nd Corinthians is really important for us as parents. As we look to lead well in this topic that we talked about today, especially with technology, we need to do it in such a way that honors our kids. But maybe more than honoring our kids is respecting the way that it impacts their soul and understanding that. We know that to be true. So having these conversations to show them love, I think in the way that Dr. Kathy has encouraged today, is really helpful. And I think stepping strongly into this moment can be a bright light that shines and cuts through the dark times. You know, one of the things that we mentioned today was the Wise phone. It's from Techless Wireless. If you'd like a discount on this phone, just visit techless.com/celebrate kids. That's techless.com/celebrate kids. They have new phones that are being released in the month of May. And I have one of the first generations of this phone. I really like it. It really does cut down on the distraction of what my phone can be and what the different apps call me for. They're designed to take my time. And the Techless Wireless phone actually is really helpful to just help me communicate. And that's it. You know, I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast in this daily segment, Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender, and I'm really looking forward to spending the week with you here this week. And we'll see you here again tomorrow.